What's up, guys? This is Nick from Arch City Poker, and in today's video, I'm going to be continuing the poker hand review series with today's episode covering two pot limit Omaha hands that I played out of the small blind. So, without further ado, let's get into the action. I will show you guys the hands as played on America's Card Room, and then get into the full hand analysis in PokerJuice. So, this first hand, the cutoff opens, and I decide to 3-bet him with very strong queens from the small blind. I think that's quite standard. Flop texture is one that I believe he does have the range advantage on. I don't think I should be doing a whole lot of leading on this board texture, as I shouldn't have that many strong hands on this flop. So I go for check call, which I think is pretty standard for most players. I think you can lead and call a raise profitably, but I don't think it's the best line overall for my range, or this specific hand, really. So flop checks through. Turn, I decide to go for check call. You can certainly argue a line of bet at that point, but I will get into the hand analysis, and I think you guys will see why check call is better, especially against an opponent that I considered one that will stab more often than not when his opponent shows quite a bit of weakness on this type of board texture. River, 10 of diamonds. I don't think there's any reason to really lead at this point. I think that I'll let him try to continue his story. He bets about half pot. I think it's pretty telling. I think he is trying to rep a smaller flush or maybe a straight. Because of that, I think a lot of players would argue you should be able to check raise, but I will show you guys why I think check raise is a mistake compared to check call. I think check raise is profitable, but I think it's certainly not as profitable as check call in this spot. So let's get into PokerJuice and go over the hand in further detail. Okay, guys, so you just saw the hand in America's Card Room. Now we're going to review it in PokerJuice. I'm going to go pretty fast because I want to keep this video short for the sake of time, obviously, for everybody's time, but I think it'll go pretty well. So, cutoff open, I 3-bet. Again, I think that's standard. I think you can mix in a call to strengthen your flatting range if you do play a mixed strategy out of the small blind, but I do think I 3-bet more often than not here. And like I said, on this flop texture, it doesn't do my range is definitely at a disadvantage on this board texture. I think he has a lot more two pair, a lot of combo draws, a lot of sets, straights. I think he has many more of that type of thing. For hands that I would pretty much lead in this spot, I think you could lead ace-ace with nut clubs. I think you can obviously lead sets plus, but I think with a lot of those hands, I might go for check raise or check call. Like I said, I just don't think I do that well on this board texture with a lot of my range with hands that I don't want to get blown off of at this point. So I do think check call is pretty standard here, actually. Flop checks through, and at this point, the assumption I can make about my opponent pretty accurately at these stakes is that he's going to be pretty capped now. He can definitely have straights and some flushes on the turn, but I think he never has 8-7 or sets on the flop. So I think he's capped to a few flushes because I do think he would barrel some of his flush draws on the flop. And then definitely some straights, as he could check back some pair plus gutter, that type of stuff. So as you can see, though, I'm still doing very well against his range on this board texture. I think because I wouldn't be doing a whole lot of leading on this specific card and on this overall run out, I do, again, go for check and just call. I don't think I get worse to call often enough in this spot. I think I do better by allowing this more aggressive opponent to basically bet and then go bet on the river. So check call. And just for the sake of showing you guys real quick in the range distribution, I think that a point that I want to make real quick about the kinds of flushes that he could have or like how high they are. I think that if he does have flushes, then he's going to have only better flushes than me most of the time, because if he has 9 high flush draws and 6 high flush draws on the flop, I think those are often betting the flop because a lot of his range, like a lot of his specific 9 of clubs and 6 of clubs, are going to be connected with hands that connect well with this flop. So I don't think they would be checking behind all that often. So if he does have a flush, I do think it's often king high, ace high, and then his straight flushes, which, like I said, though, I think those would have bet, like those specific combos would have bet on the flop more often than not. So I think he'd be very king high and ace high heavy with his flushes here to show you guys if that is correct or not, which I definitely believe it is. I'll show you how often he has clubs just to show you in the range distribution here. And so his river range, he's going to have clubs. Well, actually, let me show you guys on the turn here because that would be a little bit more accurate. So let's go back, and I apologize for the delay. Okay, yeah, so this is what I want to show you guys. So let me go ahead and punch this in. These are his straights, obviously. These are like his gutters slash kind of air that he's just stabbing with. It has some kind of equity. And then these are his clubs. So you guys can see on the subset B here that he has flushes about 20% of the time. When I switch that to flushes that are, sorry guys, that are going to be king high, ace high, and then, basically his straight flushes, I'll have those in there just sometimes when he has them. Go ahead and rerun this. And I think it'll prove to you guys that my initial thoughts were correct. And you can see about 19% of the time he has basically better flushes than me. So that's basically almost every time that he does have a flush, it's going to be better than my queen high flush. The reasons for this are, like I said, if he has a 9 high flush or 6 high flush, his range construction are made up of specific combos that the 9 of clubs and 6 of clubs will be connected with other cards that would have bet this type of flop texture, like 9-8-6, 8-7-6 with those specific 9 of clubs and 6 of clubs. I also block the jack high and 10 high flush, obviously. So I think that my initial thoughts on this were very correct. And that's why I don't like check raise as much, because if I had, let's say, queen 6 of clubs in here, I could get the jack high or 10 high flush to call more often, but I block those, so I don't think he has that many 9 high or 6 high flushes that aren't straight flushes, basically, and then just better flushes, and I don't think his straights will really call check raise. So that's what made me come to the conclusion of check call being the best line. And just a quick side note, his sizing here is quite weak. He's basically trying to rep like a 9 high flush or maybe like a straight in this spot. So I think if I didn't have a flush, if I had just had the queen of clubs, king of clubs, or ace of clubs blocker, I could certainly pot it here and get folds enough of the time to make this a successful bluff. However, with my actual hand, I think it just works much better just to check call. And when you guys saw the hand in America's Card Room, he basically had straight up air. I think his bluff was pretty bad, having no club blockers or no straight blockers. So interesting hand, and I hope that my analysis of the hand made sense for you guys. So let's move on to the second hand, and I'll try to get through that as quickly as I can. Okay, guys, and here's the second hand. Not gonna really try to analyze this one too much as shown. I'll analyze it in in PokerJuice. I open from the small blind with King Jack 9-3 double suit, get called by the big blind, decide to c-bet, get raised, decide to call the raise, as I think that he's repping a very narrow range at this point and is possibly just attacking board texture. Although, as you guys will see, I don't think that's very smart by him. I check, he bets pretty close to pot, very polarizing. I decide to call. I think I'm a little too high up in my range. And try to go for check call again. And we end up checking down, he shows air. Alright guys, and so you just saw that hand in America's Card Room again. Here it is imported into PokerJuice. As I said, I open King Jack 9-3 double suit. I think that's pretty standard here. My opponent flats me in the big blind. I think most opponents are flatting with almost their entire range and then three betting, most of their better Broadway rundowns. Obviously, their ace ace and king king, very possibly even a lot of their queen queen that aren't as strong. So I have him with about 85% of his range, excluding like the obvious three bet hands pretty much. So I think it's, like I said, not an exact science, but I think it's pretty accurate. And on this flop texture, as I said, I think I pretty much have the range advantage always. I always have more ace ace. I think I have more ace king a lot of the time. I do think I have more king X, as I just have more big cards in my range, as I did open from the small blind and he just flatted. So I think I certainly have the range advantage here, and for that reason, I decided to go ahead and lead. Now, most of the time when I have such a large range advantage, I think it's important to bet closer to pot. However, this flop texture is very dry, and I think that I would like to target hands that aren't possibly just ace X. I also think that a half pot bet will often induce an opponent, which in this case, it actually goes ahead and does that, so it works out pretty perfectly. I range him at this point is having trips plus, obviously, because he can certainly have that. I have gutters, because I think those are the most reasonable and obvious bluffs. And then I have just purely like hands that have a jack or a 10 with backdoor suits, something where he has like future blockers, has the opportunity to barrel the turn with equity that he picks up. So I think that's probably pretty accurate. He can certainly have a wider range of just air attacking this board texture, and you guys saw his actual hand. He did have, I believe it was like 10 of diamonds in his hand. It was a 10 high kind of, I guess like a trashier rundown if I remember correctly. But anyway, so I think at this point there's not a whole lot of reason to. I don't think a raise like a 3-bet accomplishes really anything here, so I go ahead and just flat. And on the turn, pretty interesting card. If he did have Jack 10, that certainly gets there, but I do have the Jack of Hearts that will block a lot of the straights that he could have. I do expect him to continue with his entire range pretty much that he raised with on the flop here, so he does go ahead and pretty much pots it. That's very polarizing. I expect this to be a hand like mine plus. I don't think this is often a worse king. I can show you guys real quick again in range distribution what I believe he has, and I can show you how often basically he just has like trips plus. And like I said, I don't think he's going to have all his king X, but just to show you for the sake of how much of his range will be these types of hands. So it's only going to be about 33% of his range, and as you guys can see, I'm doing very well against his range that often does have some pair plus gutter stuff still, and then like even some air. So I think it's pretty easy call here. I don't want to let him off the hook and only get called by hands that are possibly better than mine. 9 on the river, obviously a very good card in case he was there with the straight. At this point, I still don't think there's any reason to really lead. I think I just would like to let him barrel off. And he goes ahead and checks behind and did show his pretty much air. So, couple interesting hands. I think that it was nice to show that you should be thinking about what a check raise will accomplish and what your line accomplishes overall. And I think with a lot of opponents, or with a lot of players that are more novice or intermediate, even in PLO, they see a flop texture like this and like, well, I have trips and I have the ability to possibly boat up very well on the turn of river. I should just raise and try to get it in. My hand's very good, but you have to understand what his continuing range is going to be and what hands you get to call you with. So, if you guys have any questions or comments about this hand review, go ahead and certainly fire away in the comment section, and I'll get back to you guys as quickly as I can. Until next time, this is Nick from Arch Poker. Take care.